way to do that sort of tax efficiently is to put a preferred return, to create a few classes of share, maybe one or two classes of share, and put a preferred return on our share class, the VC share class. The benefit of that is we can roll up the dividends on those shares, provided we don't take them out of the company. We're not going to pay any tax on them as that preferred return accrues. If we were to sell those shares in the future with the dividends rolled up, we wouldn't pay any capital gains tax in the UK. We'd pay capital gains tax. We wouldn't pay any dividend tax. It's all comes within CGT. If you contrast that to debt, if you had a debt instrument with interest rolled up on it, then the sale of that loan notes with the debt rolled up would be subject to tax or income tax rates on the interest. So by creating this preferred return, the shares attributable to us are worth much more than Andy's shares. So we can give Andy and the development team what we commonly refer to as sweet equity, which is equity that they don't pay very much for, but gives them a share of the business in the future. So once that preferred return has been paid, either on an exit or through the payment of dividends, then there's a significant transfer of value over to Andy and the development team, which is quite a tax efficient way of doing it. I think, as Constantine mentioned, what's probably of more interest is using the crypto itself as a funding mechanism. And we discussed the issues with the SEC, but there's sort of a number of routes that you can take to achieving that funding. So sort of historically, maybe sort of 3 or 4 years ago, you may have all heard about initial coin offerings. And these were sort of token sales where, depending on how early you got in, you were guaranteed more tokens once the development of the platform went live. They are quite easy to do. I understand technologically, you develop something called an ERC token on the Ethereum chain or on one of the other chains. But as Constantine says, this is almost like a public offering. So you're likely to, you could fall foul of those security rules in the US. There's a private route that you can take. One thing we see or have seen in the past is what's called a future agreement for token sales. And this is where you transfer some cash into the development team or into the development entity. They use that cash to pay the engineers to develop the system. And then once the system goes live or the platform goes live, those tokens, that payment you've made is transferred into tokens that you receive that you can use on the network. And the idea being, as the network grows and becomes more popular, those tokens are worth more, and you make your profit that way. There's also quite an interesting question that maybe David might be able to answer on this, is the use of crypto as a reward for the management team. So rather than giving them shares, giving them crypto. And the point we raised yesterday when we were discussing this was whether that could be considered a security for the employment-related securities regime, and if so, whether they'd be subject to tax on that, and if not, whether there's something that you could do to prevent the tax issues.